back on and Rue when they were sort of a good margin ahead. But it's Abdul, innit? I think there's something people are struggling to cope with Jordan Abdul. I'm not quite sure if it's that weird sort of size for the position. He is a bit uncharacteristic and unpredictable at times for opponents, but Tony Smith's one of the best coaches at coaching players to get around unpredictability. We've saw that with how he coached expertly dummy half play over the years, and that sort of stuff. And Matt Parcell is another beneficiary of that sort of coaching as well. But it looks like Cass was shit, to be honest.
Yeah, it does seem to be a little bit of that, and a little bit of KR kind of performing better than perhaps you would expect. But yeah, I mean, Abdul he's just one of those players. He's a thorn in team side. I think he enjoys being an underdog. He enjoys being in kind of an unfancied team, and you can't argue with his kind of winning record in unfancied teams in Super League. It's very respectable.
Yeah, well done to Hull KR winning on the road. Do you think there would be any influence from it being fans back in, kind of the emotion of it got to Cass maybe? Is that an excuse we can level, or do you think they just maybe? It's hard to say, isn't it? Whether they kind of relaxed into the game, thinking we've got the crowd at home, it's only Hull KR, we're going quite well. Maybe they didn't take it seriously enough.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like from Rob's point of view that they just didn't have field position. They weren't allowed, kind of, as the game wore on, to actually do what they need to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, well done to KR for controlling the match, it would seem.
Let's move on to the other team in Hull who were playing in Hull. Hull FC against Catalans. It was 4-4 at half time. A try for Hull and 2 penalty goals for Catalans got to that score. Then it finished though 27-10 to the Dragons. Chris Kendall was the referee. The stats back up a healthy Catalans win, actually, as they won across the board, other than breaks, which were even at 2 each. Hull FC had under 1,000 metres, never good. Catalans with 330 more metres at 1.6 metres per carry, better average gain. Ladrax also made fewer errors, conceded fewer penalties, and had a 3.3% better team tackle success rate. So, like I say, stat wins across the board for the Dragons. 2 sin binings probably didn't help Hull FC either in this one. Individually, Tom Davies, 2 tries, 6 tackles, 170 metres. Julien Bousquet, 153 metres. Fouad Yaha, 135 metres. And Ben Garcia, 49 tackles. Whilst for the losing Black and Whites, Jake Connor, 2 try assists, 3 offloads. Danny Houghton, 54 tackles, 12 marker tackles. Yeah, mate. Joe Cater, 41 tackles, 11 marker tackles, no missed tackles. By the way, Danny Houghton missed 9 tackles, so he... that's a lot more work as well, isn't it, that he's caused himself to do. But Joe Cater, no missed tackles. And Adam Swift, 111 metres for the cartoon dog.
Hey!
See? 2 nicknames in there. Disciplinary-wise, James Maloney for Catalans got a caution for dangerous contact, and Liggy Sow of Hull got a caution for other contrary behaviour. I think he stamped on someone or stood on someone or something. So, not sure the ins and outs of that. But we had a few fan views. Do you want to take us away with the first one?
Yep, so Mark Snide's Forgotten Right Foot says, a tight opening half didn't give either side an opening, but Catalans were on top. Great finishing for Hull's tries, but they'll rue the chances not taken, and they couldn't kick on after the scores. Catalan outplayed Hull on both sides of the ball, and credit to them, Hull weren't allowed much attacking territory. The defence was broken, and they were put to the sword.
Alan Walker said, first win of the season against a decent side. Does that say we're better than our form says we are, or does it mean Hull are a shit team, or both? Or am I tripping on paint fumes? Alan, knowing you, always option C.
All of those things could be true. Joshua's granddad says, Catalan being Catalan, Kendall being Kendall, and FC being flat added up to one dire match.
And Sarah McKenzie said, highlights, being back in the stadium. Lowlights, glasses steaming up constantly and the match. We looked off the pace tonight and succumbed to Catalan's niggling ploys. A few questionable decisions by Kendall will never help. So yeah, we only really have the Hull FC view on those decisions. So we don't unfortunately have the balance to see if he was either making questionable decisions for both sides or whether they were just questionable to Hull fans. We don't have the luxury, unfortunately, but it does seem like a few things went the wrong way for the Hull FC players when they were back in their home ground in front of their crowds, which isn't great for them. Now, from what I've seen from the highlights, what I would say is the last pass on both Hull tries was forward. So,
but you don't see that if you're a home fan, do you?
Well, you struggle to see that if you're behind the sticks as well. To be fair to the people who were sending in match reviews who were sat behind the sticks, and it could be the camera angle with forward passing and stuff, but they both looked from forward passes, whereas Catalans scored quite a lot. There was 6,000 in this. For this game, which is a decent crowd. I assume all 6,000 that were able to go did go, and they will be disappointed. Now the scoreline got a bit of a padding late, didn't it, with Davies' tries come in when Satai was in the sin bin, but so maybe there's a slight exaggeration to the scoreline there, but still. It's a big win for Catalans. A statement win, do you say?
I think along with Huddersfield, they're for me the team that's hardest to pin down at this point. I think with everyone else, I can either say good, middling, or shit. Catalan are a bit of everything, as are Huddersfield. But they are, they've been winning games, haven't they? So they're at the right end of the table. And yeah, it is a bit of a statement win, I would say, because FC have been playing well. For them, they'll look at this game as a big win, without question, I would say.
I suppose there's a link here. It's another team that's fallen a bit flat after winning in the Challenge Cup. With Castleford one of them and Hull FC another one there. Do you know, in terms of what was good in the game, the McMeekan try from the highlights looks good, but it looks slightly easy when you're watching the highlights. But it's really impressive when you watch a clip that Catalans put out on their social media, because the play before the play that the try was actually scored on had loads of ball movement, enterprise, flair, skill. They went across the pitch probably 3 times in the move before being tackled, and it had pushed Hull's defenders all over and way out of position. And then Tompkins came across on a big looping line round the back to get the ball to set McMeekan free. And I think that whole play before, the expansiveness of it, with a couple of half breaks in there as well, that kind of pushed Hull's defenders out of position, probably led to that try. That was quite good stuff, and Catalans will want to see a bit more of that, because what we've seen from him a lot this year is really good structured play that's broken down opposition defences. But when they've come up against the top teams, they've not been able to break the defence down. We've seen it against Warrington twice. So in this game, to maybe show a little bit more off the cuff stuff within that structure might be their way to overcome the better defences, the better sides. So it's a good sign for them, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that.
Okay, let's move on, shall we, to a game that I saw So I can tell you what happened. Lee versus Wigan. Yes, Derek Beaumont didn't get his way, and the fans were able to watch it on our league. So it was 16-all at half-time, actually, after Lee had taken an early 10-0 lead, but it finished 30 points to 16 in what is now a classic 2021 second-half domination from the Wigan Warriors. Ben Thaler was the referee. In terms of the stats, Wigan's efficiency was better, with a 1.6 meters per carry better average gain and a 2% better team tackle success rate. Also, over 300 more meters for Wigan and 4 more breaks with 3 more tries. Goal kicking still an issue, though. It was young Harry Smith this time, only at 50% on the goal kicking. Individually, Bevan French back at fullback, 1 try, 1 try assist, 9 tackle busts, 201 meters. Don Manfredi, 1 try, 167 meters. Liam Farrell, 1 try, 158 metres, and John Bateman, 152 metres and 5 successful offloads. And Liam Farrell's stats are why I know the Fantasy League stats are way off, because he only got 10 points. So they're not right. So we're not counting them this week. For the losing Leafers, Matty Wilde had 50 tackles, 10 of which were mark tackles. Nathan Peets had 42 tackles, 10 of which were mark tackles, none of which were missed tackles. Anthony Freeman Gelling had a try, 119 metres and 3 successful offloads, and Mark Ioni was impressive actually with his 115 metres. From the disciplinary, Ian Thornley got a grade A high tackle, no match penalty notice for a high shot in the first half of this game, when around the point the tide started to turn, I think, in the match. And I've got a couple of fan views though, Al.
Yep, so Matt Speakman says, a win's a win, I guess. Strange game with glimpses of attacking threat, but poor errors and discipline from both teams. Having said that, Mr. Thaler was hot on his whistle and there was no flow to the game at all. Only concern really is Smithy's injury. He's been looking good this year. Havard looked back to his best and Hastings will be sorely missed.
Yeah, and Jen K said, jealous of all the fans allowed into the ground, especially when it's weeks till we get a sniff of a chance at the DW. Got the R-League at working this time for an enjoyable but scrappy game. Lots of praise about our performance, and I'm liking what I see of Harry Smith having more of an impact all the time. Had once again forgotten we still had Mitch Clark, and he was decent tonight. Yeah, Mitch Clark saves all his best performances for against the Lee Centurions. It's just 2 of them have been in pre-season so far. But he got a chance here against the rumoured to be leaving Wigan at the end of the season, Joe Bullock, who was dropped in favour of Clark, and I think Clark sort of took his chance. Matt makes a good point pulling out the. He's described it as Mr. Thaler being hot on his whistle, but what I would say, there were a lot of penalties in this game. I can't remember what the final penalty count was from the stats actually, and I've closed down the spreadsheet, but there were a lot of penalties in this game, and they came in bunches for each side as well. There was about 3 or 4 in a 10-minute spell in the middle towards the end of the first half that went in Wigan's favour, after a bunch that went for Lee earlier on. And in the second half, there was a good smattering of penalties as well. I wonder if this was an impact of the crowd. I think because a lot of the penalties were for offside, and you don't see huge amounts of offside penalties in games nowadays, and certainly not throughout the game. You think players normally get a handle when there's a number of them in the opening period of what the referee's expectations are and stuff, but it didn't really happen in this game. There were a lot of offside penalties, and I just wondered if that was, with like the crowd there and trying a little bit harder, putting a little bit more in, and not quite getting it right because of that. I do think that was a factor in this game, and it did help make the game less fluid, less enjoyable to watch. But Bevan French is fluid, and Bevan French is enjoyable to watch. He got man of the match. I think he was probably man of the first half for Wigan, and Jackson Hastings, for 4 try assists in the game, was man of the second half for Wigan. Is what I would say. But if you've had the chance to catch up on the highlights this one, Bevan French's kick for the Harry Smith try that got Wigan back into the game, that was a great spot, a great piece of skill, even if there's questionable defensive positioning. Harry Smith's pass for Manfredi's try, that was good too. It came not long after what I would call a borderline forward pass that took away what would have been a wonderful try-assist pass for Bevan French. Basically, if it was Jake Connor making the pass to Mahi Fanua, the try would have been scored. It was that that marginal. League just have got the same problems that we've talked about all year, Al, about the positions. We've been talking loads about who's playing in the half